Welcome back. All right, we love downtown, and Kaylee is going to be live right now in downtown at the Hers building on the square, I think for a little history lesson.
Yes.
Kaylee?
That's right. Good morning, guys. Over 150 years ago, this downtown square in Springfield looked a lot different than it does today. It was more open, and nearly everyone used it as a place to publicly gather, which led to the perfect setting to find enemies, and it also led to the perfect setting for the first Wild West shootout. That being said, here is the story of Wild Bill.
It became the very first gunfight in the Old West.
Influencing all the subsequent Hollywood movies, July 1865 put Springfield on the map.
It received a lot of press across the country.
Bill Hickok was a military man by trade and a gambler by hobby.
Enjoying himself as any young man just back from the war would do. He made friends with a man named Davis Tutt, who had exactly the same background but on the other side of the battle. Tutt had been a Confederate soldier. Hickok had been a Union soldier.
The gambling put Wild Bill in the red, and friends quickly turned into enemies.
They had a dispute and a poker game over a watch.
Tutt called him on a gambling debt. They argued over it. Tutt took his pocket watch as collateral for the gambling debt, and Hickok threatened him and said, "Don't ever let me see you wear that on the square."
And if he did, he would shoot him.
And when Tutt toted the watch on the square,
He walked in from the northwest corner here by the Hers building. Hickok walked into the square from South Street.
the first Wild West shootout began, nearly as quickly as it ended.
Tutt was killed. Hickok, of course, was not wounded.
A showdown that left Wild Bill Hickok with the infamous title that would always precede him.
300 feet across there. It's a pretty substantial distance.
The astounding accuracy of the shot at that distance with a muzzle-loading cap and ball revolver was pretty extraordinary.
Now, Hickok was charged and arrested for murder, but Tutt was the first one that brandished his weapon, so Hickok got off with self-defense. In other words, Hickok later even went on to run for city marshal of Springfield. Once he lost that, he moved out of town. Some historians consider Wild Bill one of the greatest gunfires of the American West. And if you would like to know more about this story, there are walking tours provided by the History Museum, the History Museum on the square. And those are, more information can be found there by contacting the History Museum on the square. Guys?
So interesting. Okay, Kayla, we have a couple of questions for you. Now, shooting someone over a gambling debt, how much money were they talking back then?
Yeah, back then, presumably it was over a gambling loan. So Hickok got some money from Tutt, who claimed that, Hickok claimed that it was $25, and Tutt said no, it was $35, which may seem menial, but back then that was an upwards of $400. So something to take a pocket watch over maybe, but regardless, it was a bunch of money.
Yeah, I remember watching Little House on the Prairie, and things would cost like half a penny.
Yeah.
So I can imagine $35. But as for Hickok, what happened to Hickok? What happened to him?
That's right. So the story just gets more and more interesting. So about 10 years later, Hickok got his own dose of karma when he was at a saloon in South Dakota. He was playing poker, and he was shot from behind. The cards that he was holding in poker were two pair, aces, black aces, and eights. So that is still known today as the dead man's hand.
Two black aces and an 8?
Say that again, Kaylee.
Two black aces and two black eights.
Two black
eights.
Oh.
Okay, interesting. Dead man's hand. Ooh, okay.
Well, I don't think you want that hand then
Well,
if
you
you're
would
playing.
think not. Such interesting history we have.
Yeah, and putting Springfield on the map for a really crazy reason.
You know, Missouri's got a lot of history,
Yes,
honestly.
it does.
Speaking of Little House on the Prairie, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you learned a lot, Kaylee?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And to give you more perspective of where the shooting happened and how far apart it was, we are in front of the Hers building this morning, and that's where Tutt was. And then Hickok was over by the three flags that you'll see on the south side of the square. So quite a distance, and you'll see little markings on the ground of where they stood.
Now I want to know more.
I know.
I do. I want to know more about that. That is really interesting, Kaylee. Thank you so much for this today.
You're welcome.
Okay.
All right, that's so interesting.
Isn't that